Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to learn how to make this corset blouse with a V plunge neckline. If this is what you're interested in, keep watching, like, share and subscribe. Thank you. So we'll start by drafting our basic upper bodice, and I've already gone ahead to mark out my horizontal lines, my apex points, my under bust, half length, my top length and my waist to hip measurement. I'll go ahead now and impute my other measurement. So I'll start by putting my shoulder measurement divided by 2 plus half inch, and I came down by 1.5 for my shoulder slant, and I went ahead to mark out my armhole length. My armhole length is usually my shoulder divided by 2 in most cases. So I'll go ahead to roll a straight line for that armhole, and I'll make the L-shaped mark like this. So on that L-shaped point, I'm going to go in by 1 inch so that we can do our armhole curve, and I will go up by 3 inches and come in by half inch. This will enable the armhole to sit properly on your client or on you. So I went ahead to use my armhole curve to join the lines and then connect it back to the shoulder point. I'll go ahead now and mark my neckline, and I'm using the basic neckline of 3 by 3. If I will do any alteration on the neckline, that will be after I have done this. So I'm just going ahead to mark out my 3 by 3 neckline, and I'll go ahead and square it up like this. Then I'll join my shoulder slant to my neckline like this with a straight ruler. I'll go ahead also to mark out my neckline on the pattern. I just went up by 1 inch, the same way we did on the armhole, and I connected it with my armhole curve. So that's basically it. I'll go ahead and impute my body's measurements. For the bust, I'll divide by 4, and I'll place whatever measurement I have, and I'm using 10 inches because this bust is 40. And I'll come to the waistline. I'll impute the waist measurement. The waist measurement I'm using is 30 divided by 4 is 7.5, and I'm going to mark it there and add my dart allowance, and I'm using 1 inch for my dart allowance, so I'm just going to add the 1 inch for my dart allowance. So that's it. And I'll go to the hip line. I'm going to impute my hip measurement divided by 4. The hip we're working with is 42 divided by 4 is 10.5. So I'll just go ahead and connect all the lines with my straight ruler. And then towards the hip point, I'm going to use the curvy part of my armhole curve to connect that point. I'll go ahead also to impute my dart on the waistline, and to do that, I'll mark out my nipple to nipple divided by 4. Sorry, my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'll mark it out and roll a straight line on all the lines I have marked out like this. So I'll go ahead to take out the darts of 1 inch. So I'm doing 0.5 on both sides of that line, and I'm going to connect it like this to the hip point and to the apex points. So this is basically the basic upper bodice. This is what our basic upper bodice looks like. So we'll go ahead now and do our alteration. Now for the first alteration, we're going to do the under bust tightening, and for this particular draft, I'm taking 1 inch on both sides of the dart leg, and I'm using my armhole curve to connect it back to the apex point, and then I'll connect it back to the hip line like this. Connect it back to the hip line and connect the other side. So this is that. I'll go ahead and divide the shoulder by 2 and mark the midpoint, and then I'll connect it to the apex point as well. So this is basically it. We'll go ahead now and continue with the alteration. Now I'll go ahead and mark, because I want this V plunge neckline to start from the apex point, so I'll go ahead and mark 1 inch there. Depending on how wide you want it to be, you can use 0.5, you can use 0.75, but I'm using 1 inch for this particular client. And I marked the V neckline to the under bust. You can do below your under bust, you can take it as low as your waistline, depending on the style line you're working with. So for the over bust, I went up by 3.5 inches from my apex point. I went up 3.5 inches from my apex point, and I marked it. I later came back to do 3 inches because I thought it was too high, so I did 3 inches to the apex, from the apex line. So I'll go ahead and do my over bust tightening, and I'm taking 0.75 on both sides of this straight of the shoulder line I marked initially, and I'm connecting it back to the apex point like this. So I'll go ahead now and measure this line I just marked, measure it, because most times both of them are not equal. So I measured it and I made it equal. One is usually longer than one, so the shorter one you just add to it equal. So I'll go ahead now and connect this line, but I want to use my biro to do it before I will now connect it. I highlight it with my marker. So I'm just using my biro. You can use a pencil. I couldn't get a pencil, so I'm using my biro to just check out what if this is really what I want before I use my marker to highlight it for us. So I'll also use my biro to mark out the other corset parts, which is these other parts, using my armhole curve. So I'm just checking if this is what I want. So if you check if it's what you want, you now use your marker or your pencil to highlight it. So I'm connecting this other parts to the armhole point like this, and I'll also do that to the other side. But before then, I forgot to mark my side dart. So I'm taking my side dart of 2 inches for this particular client, and I marked it towards the apex point. So I'll just go ahead and use my marker now, because I think this is what I want. So I'm using my marker to highlight all those points that I have marked initially. So I'm using my marker to highlight it like this. So to do this other part, I need to close the bust dart. So for me to close the bust dart, I need to open up my shoulder dart so I can close my bust dart and then connect that particular point. So I'll go ahead and open up my shoulder dart, sorry. I'll open up my shoulder dart now so that I can close my bust dart. So I'll go ahead and close the bust dart now. Just fold it up and use my sellotape to hold it down. So I'm finding it a little bit difficult because I didn't cut out my paper. I just didn't want to cut out my paper yet. So I'll use my sellotape to tape it down so I can stay. So that's it. So I've taped it down. So now I'll go ahead to mark this other part of the corset cup. I tried to use my armhole curve, but it was not giving me what I wanted, so I said to use my free hand to connect it like this. So you go ahead and connect it like this, and that's it. I'll go to the hemline now, and at my top length I'm going to go up by 1.5 1.5 or 1.25 depending on what you want. I think I went up by 1.25, and I'm going to use my armor curve to connect it to the that leg like this. So this is it. I'll now go ahead to cut out this pattern and we'll see what it looks like. Please watch closely to see how I cut out this pattern. Just watch closely to see how I cut it off. So for these other points, I just decided to bring it down a little bit. So I came down again from the under bust 1 inch and I connected it. So it depends on your preference. You can take it up to the waistline if you want. It depends on what particular style line you are working with. So this, I just brought it down by 1 inch again, and I'll go ahead and cut it out like this. So I'm just taking note of that point where the net is going to start from, or where the V-line ended. Just on your pattern, you just mark it. Then on your fabric, when you're cutting, we're going to notch it so that we'll know exactly where the V is stopping and where it is starting from. So I'll tape this one back because that's our yoke. I'll tape it back with my sellotape because we can't have it in pieces. We have to cut it as one. So I'm going to tape it back. Then we'll go ahead and continue with our cutting. So just watch how I'm cutting this part, this cup area. Go ahead and take out all the darts. Take out all the darts and then cut out our cup. So these are cup. I went ahead to trim out off the sharp points because we don't want the cup to be very pointy. So I went ahead to also label the cup 1 and 2. You need to label it and even label up and down as the case may be, but I just labeled it. So I'll go ahead now and sellotape this cup so that we'll see what it looks like, and then we'll be able to make it into a 3-piece cup because I want this to be a 3-piece cup. So we'll go ahead and sellotape the cup now. So this is it. I've sellotaped it and this is what the cup looks like. It's looking fine. It's looking very okay. So we're going to go ahead now and measure 2.5 inches or 2 inches depending on how whatever style line you want to make for your cup. So I did 2 inches on both. I did 2.5 inches, sorry, on both sides, and then I connected it using my marker like this. So 2.5 inches on both sides, and I'll go ahead and cut it out to make our 3-piece cup. So I'll go ahead and cut it out now. So that's the first piece. I'll go ahead and cut this one into 2 to give us the second and the third piece. So this is my 3-cup piece. I'll go ahead and label it. I'll label it 1, 2, and 3, and then I'll also mark the sides I'm joining and mark the up and the down so that I don't make mistakes. So this is it. I'll go over now. So this is all for the front. We'll go over and do the back. So let's work on the back draft. And for the back draft, I've also gone ahead to mark out my horizontal lines, my shoulder points, my apex, my half length, my top length, and my waist to hip measurement. So I'll impute my shoulder measurement divided by 2 plus half inch, and then I'll come down 1 inch for shoulder slants for the back, and then I'll go ahead and mark out my armhole length, and then I'll make a straight line with it. So this for it, for the armhole, mark out a straight line using my straight ruler, and then I'll mark out the L-shaped points like this. I'll come up 1 inch at that L-shaped mark, and I'll divide my armhole length by 2 and come in by half inch. I'll use my curved ruler, my armhole curve, to join the points, and then I'll join it back to the shoulder. Basically the same thing we did for the front, but the neckline for the front is going to be 3 by 1 inch, 3 inches width and 1 inches depth, and I'll go ahead and square it up. Then I'll connect my shoulder slants from my shoulder slants to my neck points. So after that, we'll go ahead and impute our body measurements. So my bust divided by 4 on my apex, and on my half length I'll go ahead and put my waist divided by 4 plus 1 inch for that, and on the hip measurement we'll go ahead and put the hip measurement divided by 4. I'll use my ruler to connect these lines, connect these lines like so, and then I'll go ahead and impute the dots. So the dot is my nipple to nipple divided by 2, sorry, and I'll mark it on all the lines and make a straight line. I'll go back to my waist measurement again and take out the dots of 1 inch, which is half inch on both sides. I'll take out the half inch on both sides and connect it like this to the hip point and then to the apex point. Apex. So we're done with the basic drafts. I'll go back to the shoulder and divide it by 2 and use my ruler to also connect it to the apex point. So this is our basic bodice for the back. So we're going to have a loop at the back. So to create that, first of all, I'll mark my chest point, where I want my chest point to start from. So I marked 2.5 inch from my apex. You can do 3 inches depending on how low you want your back to be, but I did 2.5 and I just wanted that to be straight. I went ahead also to mark 1/4 inch on both sides of the line on that chest point, so that we can do a tightening at the top. It's not necessary, but I just did it because we're going to have a loop at the back. It might not be necessary, but it's just the standard I do on my draft. So for my back lacing, I took out 2.5 inches on the chest point and I took 1.5 inches on the hip line. I went ahead to connect it with the straight ruler. So I'm going to cut off that part, and my eyelets are going to be on this part where I am marking out now. So the remaining one will be cut out. I want my neckline to just remain straight because we're going to have like a button on the back, at the back, sorry. We're going to have buttons. So this is my dart. I'm just marking out my dart as I'm going to take out. At the hip point, which is the top length, sorry, not at the hip point, the top length, I went up by 1.25, the same thing I did for the front, and then I connected it to the dart leg. This is basically all for the back. We'll just go ahead and cut cut it out like this. Cut, cut, cut. Take out the back lacing point and take out the yoke for the back. Cut it off like this and cut out the yoke for the back. Cut the neckline, trim it off like so. So that's the yoke for the back, and then this is for the front. So for the dart, I just went ahead to fold it because I don't want to have it in pieces. I don't want the back to be in pieces, so I just went ahead to fold the dart. So this is all for the back. We just need to cut out this in two pieces, one for one each side of the dress. One side of the back, the other side of the back. I don't know if you get, maybe I'm speaking too much English, but this is it. This is what our front looks like. I went ahead to just sellotape everything so that we'll have an idea of what it looks like. So this is what it will look like when we're done sewing and joining the sides of the back. So in our next tutorial, we're going to cut all this on fabric and we'll go ahead and sew it up so that we'll see what it will look like. If this tutorial was helpful, please like, share, comment and subscribe. See you in my next tutorial. Bye.